Hello, welcome, welcome. My name is LaTecia Yarbrough. I am founder of iRise Wellness, and I have a lovely guest with me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Leonard Taylor. I am an associate professor at Auburn University and program coordinator for the higher ed program.
Dr. Leonard Taylor. You better put that on your name.
Thanks. Thanks.
So the topic today is upscaling and the ways that you can upscale in your positions, the ways you can get the professional development, get connected to people, network. You've done a great job at this, and this is why I wanted to connect with you and allow you to have this conversation, because you've been able to navigate different spaces and places and connect people in ways that I don't think most people realize. It's something that you could do on your everyday, whether you're in conferences, your everyday meeting space, and things like that. So first, what is your idea when you think about upskilling? What comes to mind for you?
It's a good question. I think more than anything, it is maximizing the time you have in a particular place and space. And sometimes, and I would tell my students you're familiar, who are going into the field of like higher ed and student affairs, that you should never leave your professional development to somebody else's to be somebody else's responsibility. Is that it's always your responsibility to make sure that you get the skills, the experiences, the perspectives that you want to get out of a role, or to figure out what those things are that you want, because sometimes we don't know what we don't know. Yeah. And so for me, making the most of making the most of your time in a place means not just relying on whatever professional development opportunities that place sees fit for you, but thinking about what other resources you have at your disposal. So that could be professional development funds to go to other conferences. If you don't have that, it could be, seeing what other educational resources you get access to by virtue of being a part of that organization, where there might be some free learning courses or something like that. And excuse me, and a lot of times it's networking. So, who do I get to engage with as a part of my job? And what opportunities might that provide for me to continue to learn, grow, and develop in ways that, you want to or appreciate? So I was really just trying to make the most of it. The last thing I'll say too is sometimes is making use of the flexibility or downtime that you have. Mm-hmm. So, some people, I have had colleagues in the past were like, I don't know how you just do all of this networking and how you find yourself doing all of these things. I'm just so busy all the time. Mm-hmm. And my question would be, are you busy with their work or your work? And what I meant by that is that some of my colleagues in previous roles needed to feel busy to feel affirmed. So they would do the organization's work. And then when they did that and were done, they would come up with other work to do for the organization.
Yeah.
and some people say, oh, that's what we're supposed to do as educators. We want to, fine. If that's what you want to do, go for it. But my check is not changing by going above and beyond. And so, so for me, it was, if it takes me 40 hours, if it takes you 40 hours a week to do a 40-hour a week job, great. If it takes me 25, I'm getting paid for 40 hours worth of work. Yeah. Not 40 hours on the clock was the mentality that I had. Mm-hmm. And so all of my I's will be dotted and T's will be crossed with my employer. And then when I was done doing the things that was supposed to take me 40 hours to do, I would do the other things that I wanted to do for my own development. And so sometimes there's that. I was also able to get professional release time to do things that were related to my work, but not directly. So when I started my public speaking career in 2012, I would say, hey, I'm going to speak at this campus to talk about leadership or to talk about fraternity and sorority life or whatever. And my boss would say, oh, well, you don't have to use PTO for that trip. We'll just give you some professional release time because we're going to call that professional development. And so those types of opportunities give you space to maximize, your, how you grow and develop in your work. So,
yeah. So you talked about this point of networking. Some people do it well and some people don't do it so well. Like, what are some tips that you can give to people that are trying to make those connections with people where they're not awkwardly getting into these conversations or stumbling onto these blocks? What kind of tips would you give them?
Yes, that's a great question. Be genuine and authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Be vulnerable and open. And also play the long game and don't be short-sighted. So what I mean by these things, I'll start from the latter and then move backwards. Often when people network, they network for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, I need to get this job. I want to get this next opportunity. I want to get on with this person. And so you spend your time trying to develop a relationship with someone for a finite amount of time.
Yeah.
And usually an immediate amount of time. And what happens is when you try to develop a finite like a relationship for a finite amount of time, it's tenuous. It's flimsy. It doesn't hold up. You might compare this for those of you who are familiar with hookup culture, right? When we think about networking, people will take a hookup approach to finding a husband, right? You will take you take this really short and kind of short-sighted approach to developing, but you want this long-standing success. Mm-hmm. And so what I found and nothing wrong with hookups, right? I'm not saying that. Y'all get y'all life. The point is that expect to get out of it how you engage it. Mm-hmm. And so, what I think about with networking is the networking that I've done that's been the most meaningful are the relationships that are long standing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it starts off in an instant, right? Like I was at a conference that I just so happened to stumble upon, had a conversation with this person who was doing some interesting work at an organization that I wanted to partner with or potentially fund some of my work. But my first question wasn't, hey, do you want to fund my work? Right. Again, hookup culture, like, hey, you want to do it? Right. It wasn't that. It was, well, tell me more about what you do and what you're interested in. We had those get to know you questions and conversations. And that led to chatting over coffee. That led to setting up a Zoom later on. And that led to this person becoming one of my mentors in the field and getting me strategically placed to get opportunities that I would not have gotten had they not been, in the places that they were in. They brought my name into spaces because they knew me in addition to my name, right? So part of it is playing the long game when you're thinking about networking. Networking is not just for an opportunity. Networking is for this. Here's a way to reframe it. We're socialized in a lot of ways in corporate spaces because I was kind of trained in that space for a little bit. It to think about networking as opportunities, right? Yeah. It's not what you know, it's but who you know, kind of shit, bullshit.
Yeah.
It's not about what you know. Always, it's not about who you know. And then people say it's about who knows you. Yes, to an extent. But in my opinion, it's really about who's willing to talk about you favorably when you're not around.
Absolutely.
Right. Because there's a lot of people that I know that I don't talk about in the same room as opportunities. But there are some people where I'm like, oh, is opportunities here? LaTecia Yarbrough, everyone. Let me introduce you to her. You know what I mean? She's not here, but she will be. Uh-huh. And so to do that, though, for somebody to be able to be an ambassador for you, they have to have a relationship with you. They have to understand what it is that you want to accomplish. What do you do? What gets you going? Mm-hmm. So that you can be invited into that space. And so I say all that to say, rather than networking for an opportunity, you might think about networking to build relationships that could lead to opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. Because the opportunity that you want probably ain't even what you really need. But that person that you connect with can get you to what you need because they have more experience and insight in the field and are able to, engage you or able to network you within that space in a different way. So part of it is not being short-sighted. I think part of it is being vulnerable. Like I said, being vulnerable and open is saying what you need.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, and I've been in this situation before as well, where people are like, oh, I want to meet, I want to Zoom, I want to chat with you and just learn more or whatever, because you've been successful in these ways and I'm trying to do the same thing. Okay, cool. And then we get on the call and we're talking and chatting and it's cool. But I'm like, okay, so what do you need? What type of support do you need? So, I don't know. Okay. It's okay not to know. But this wasn't the best use of time.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, who else can you have prepared for this meeting with so that you could have an ask, when that time came? And it's not that you lead with the ask, but when you get the opportunity to, like when somebody says, what do you need? Have something to say. Right. And I fall a victim to that too, where I've been in a situation where I'm like, I'm just starstruck. I'm like, oh shit, I'm sitting and talking to someone. So I don't even know what I need. Missed opportunities.
Yeah.
And now people are like, what do you need? Money. What do you need? Right. Resources. What do you need? Mentorship and support.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like for you? Time, connections, and examples.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, to be able to have those specific things, you have to be vulnerable and say that you need stuff. Mm-hmm. I've been in situations with Black men, and I always have to pause because I love my brothers. I do. Mm-hmm. But sometimes they let their pride get in the way at the wrong damn times. So I'm with younger professionals and they want so bad for me to see them as legitimate that they're not willing to show the areas that they need to grow and develop in, or the help that or they're not willing to ask for the help that they need. Mm. Now here's the thing. I've been doing this for a long time. You can't dress up raggedy and fool me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to see it. But the difference is, because I've also been there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've been there. I've been that person, right? But the difference is, if you come to me saying, hey, here's what I got, but also here's what I need, bet. Let's take what you got. I got a little something that will give you what you need, and we can go forward. But if you're like, hey, I got it. I don't really need nothing.
Cool.
And I'm like, yes. And I'll be here like, yes, you do. But go ahead. go right on ahead. I'm going to give this support, resource, insight, whatever to somebody else who is willing to say and name what they need. Because none of us are ever getting anywhere in our careers in a vacuum.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so that's the second point. And the third point around being authentic is just be you. Yeah. And so the other part around networking is people feel like, because of these kind of like corporate sentiments around what networking means, that you have to be a certain type of savvy, that you have to move a particular way or talk a particular way or dress a particular way. And let me tell you, all of that can be bullshit as well. For example, I have previous employees, and I use this example often, wear a suit to work every day. Now, mind you, student affairs. Why are you wearing a suit to work every day? I don't know. How you got money to get that many suits? That's not my business. But wear the suit to work every day, but also on the cusp of being let go. And so we had a conversation when I took over as the supervisor. And I said, look, don't wear no more suits. And he said, why? And I said, because you give me sweatpants work every day. And I needed to match. So if you want to get back to wearing these suits, baby, I need you to I need you to dress this work up.
Consistency.
I mean congruence. I need you to get this work together. right? But some people have been socialized in that fake it till you make it kind of space where you got to dress for success or whatever. And I'm gonna tell you, dressing for success work if you're a model. Maybe if you're a stylist, but even then, you got to do more. I mean, modeling. You got to like even in those spaces. It's not just the dress.
Yep.
But the point is that like I need to see your work. I don't,
Yes.
there's so part of it is not trying to put on because you think that you need to look or act a certain way. And to be honest, if the people that you're networking with need you to perform in that way, those might not be the best folks for you. Now, if you love to perform in that way, that's authentically who you are, and those are your people, go for it. But don't feel like you have to dramatically or drastically change yourself to find connections with people from a mentoring perspective, because chances are if you come into it performing, then you're going to have to perform in these inauthentic ways throughout that relationship that you develop, or that a relationship will dissipate because it wasn't built on something authentic to begin with. And so that's really it. If you awkward, be awkward. You know what I mean? Let people know, like, hey, I'm kind of awkward, but let's chat. You know what I mean? Like, because we all been living in a box for, however much time during lockdown and all this other type of stuff. So let me tell you, everybody's social skills are raggedy. The awkward folks, this is y'all season. This is the awkward folks season.
Oh, that's funny.
So use that, leverage that. And the last thing I'll say about the authentic piece is you can't fake passion.
Nope.
You can't fake passion. You know what I mean? Like, you can fake skill, you can fake expertise. You can't fake passion. And people can tell when you're genuinely passionate about something, when you're showing up in your genuine and authentic self. And so that's what tends to get people excited to network with you, to mentor you, to support you, is to see the authentic you, like, oh, I believe in that person.
Yeah.
But the facade,
not
so much. So anyway, long answer, but
no, I think that was a good answer. And I'm also thinking about the ways that people do these things disingenuous, do these things to try to take shortcuts. And, everybody knows somebody. And those conversations are had at different tables and different spaces about the raggediness of how that person showed up.
Let me tell you, because this is the other thing that I will say in the grand scheme of these things around networking. Being congruent, being consistent, being authentic, all of those are important, because lies are fast and they will catch up with you.
Yep.
And so, the truth is fast and it will catch up with you. And what I've seen happen is that people will not know, people will be looking for opportunities, but they don't know everybody I know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so they give me one version of themselves. And then I hit up friend, like, hey, friend, I was looking at this person's CV and they were at your institution for a little bit of time. Mm-hmm. Did you connect with them by chance? And friend would say, I did. and I'll say, and that's it.
And that's it. You don't need anything else.
Say less, right? And so those are that's why I say, going back to, it's not about what you know, but who you know, not about who you know, but who knows you, and not about who knows you, but who's willing to speak favorably about you, right? Some people know you and won't have nothing to say, good or bad, and that's not good, right? Yeah. Like, you want the people to know you, to have good things to say, or at least have heard good things. Yeah. And so there's power in treating everybody with a certain level of dignity and respect that contributes to your ability to network. There's power in showing up as best you can in the spaces that you occupy, and that's not always perfect, but it as authentically as you feel like you can. I'll say there's one more kind of example. There's a scholar in our field who is just a big name. And I had never met her before, but of course, I've read plenty of her work and cited her extensively. And I was at a conference, and she was there, and I was socializing with another colleague in the crowd, and she had walked up because she was coming to talk to that colleague. Yeah. And she said, "Oh, you must be Leonard." I almost lost my shit. Like, how do you know me? How you know me? But then she went on to say, "Oh, the colleague that I was referencing is one of my best friends, and y'all been working on this paper together." Mm-hmm. And she's been saying all of these great things about, who you are, how you show up, how you think. And so it's nice to finally meet you. And I was like, hey, but that goes to show that, like, when you do good work, yeah, and try to show up in good and authentic ways in all your spaces, that can sometimes network for you, because the people who see you, even if you don't see them, they're going to put you on, they're going to put your name out there in ways that you can never, in spaces that you could never imagine.
Absolutely. So we spent some time talking about networking. I want to spend some time talking about professional development and ways that people can professional development, whether that is conferences at home and just different spaces. What happens for institutions that don't have professional development funds to give their people? What would you suggest other avenues that they can take to gain some skills?
Yes, that's a good question. If people tell you they don't have money, they're lying.
Yep.
Usually, right? And I'm speaking from a higher ed perspective. I can't speak for, like educators in other contexts per se. But in higher education, they might not have money to have a budget line item allocated for professional development for each employee. Yeah. Right? But that does not mean that they don't have funds sitting somewhere that can be used for professional development. And so part of it is recognizing what type of developmental opportunities that you are interested in and being able to make the case for why the university should give you funds or your employer should give you funds to do those things. Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to be like, oh, I want to go to a conference. Cute. We all do. Yeah. In places that you want to be. That's fine. But you have to demonstrate how you going to that conference is going to contribute to that organization's mission or bottom line. Mm-hmm. And so to say, oh, I'm going to this conference because it's about A, B, and C, which is a part of our mission, and I'll be able to do X better. Yeah, that is what gets you funding, right? Mm-hmm. Networking with the people who potentially have budgets mm-hmm. that are more discretionary. So I was really good at using, when I was a full-time employee at University of Minnesota, I was also a full-time graduate student in the doctoral program. And by and large, administrators don't necessarily like be checking for, entry-level employees, right? Like these senior administrators aren't like, ooh, hall director, hey, mm-hmm. Let me take you under my wing. But they gush over students. Yeah. Right. Like students in higher ed, they're like, oh, yes, I want to mentor you. I want to develop you. I want to provide some support. And so I would always lead with my student identity. And so I'm reaching out to VPs and, all of these other provosts and whatever. And I'm like, hey, I'm a student in the org leadership program here. Mm-hmm. I'd love to just kind of do an informational interview, pick your brain about your role. I'm envisioning my academic trajectory. And it was genuine, right? Like I was having these conversations because I really wanted to know. But when it got to the point where they were like, well, what do you need? Or how can I be supportive? Well, I'm really trying to think about professional development. Here's some avenues that I want to explore, but I have limited funds. Say less, send me to the things, right? And so part of it is recognizing that no is often a suggestion. No is an opinion. This is what I tell my students. No is often an opinion. Mm-hmm. And so, the first person say it again.
I said, I know that very well.
Yes, you do. So, there are always opportunities. It's just sometimes it's asking the right question to the right people at the right time. Mm-hmm. The other thing is using professional development isn't always like you going somewhere and soaking up ideas and soaking up knowledge and resource. Sometimes it's taking on a new task.
Yeah.
So, being strategic about volunteering to do new things outside of your role can be also opportunities for professional development. For example, when I was at the University of Minnesota, I asked my supervisors at the time if I could have more responsibilities. Like if they had this weird thing where you can't be on a committee for your first year as a hall director because for some reason we need you to, get comfortable in the job and just learn the job. And I was like, I don't have a year to learn the job because I don't plan on being here for like 5 years. Like what? Like if I leave next year, then I just spend half of my time here learning the job, and then like half of it doing anyway. That's neither here nor there. Some people would disagree with me, and that's fine. But I was like, no, I don't receive that, right? So I'm like, if y'all are saying no to providing the extra opportunities to be on committees and learn and grow in these ways, and that's fine, but that's not the end of it. So the two things that I did was find other places to volunteer and started this doc program. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I did to volunteer, there was a call that came out about second year students, because there was this task force on second year students. And I was like, well, that's not my research area per se, second year students specifically, but I do student success work. And I'm also interested in assessment and evaluation. So I put my name in the hat. I got invited to one of my mentors at the institution. I got an invitation from said mentor, who was higher than my boss's boss's boss, to be a part of the campus-wide assessment committee focused on second year students. And so I pull up to the first committee meeting, and my boss's boss is at the meeting like, oh, Leonard, what are you doing here? And I was like, I'm on the committee. Oh, I had the fuck? Like,
I had no idea.
Right. And it was like, oh, I didn't know, so-and-so didn't tell me. I was like, well, so-and-so invited me. So
I'm here. Hi.
And what was important about that is that I didn't apologize. It wasn't like, I hope that's okay. No, I'm here. I'm here. And if you got an issue with me being here, you need to take it up with the person who invited me to be here.
Yep.
Because I'm not leaving my development to chance. Fast forward, my time on that committee at the university level for University of Minnesota, which at the time was the third largest public higher ed institution in the country, doing assessment for second year students, looking at how, the landscape of surveys that they had to kind of capture student engagement was shaped, thinking about how they were using data for decision making. That's my work right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I teach assessment and evaluation classes. I teach IR classes. I do research related to student engagement and student success work. Like had I not gotten that opportunity, I don't know that I would have been as prepared or interested in coming down this pathway. And so again, that wasn't me going to some conference and getting inspired. That wasn't anything that cost money. It was me volunteering for an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
In exchange for some labor. Right. And so there are some ways that professional development in spaces that are resource poor or have like limited resources can come through service.
Yeah.
And chances are, if it's a place that don't have a lot of resources, they probably have some shortages in labor.
Yeah.
So you figure out what those shortages are and you volunteer for the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
Before somebody asks you to do the things that you don't want to do.
And I'm starting to, there has been conversations that my friends have had and, different professionals have had about people not wanting to do free labor. There's this stigma around putting yourself out there to do something without being paid to do so. Can you speak to that?
Yes. Now, what I'm going to say is not going to be what some people want to hear. I am a first wave millennial. And so, and different generations grow up in different ways and have different priorities, right? And so it's not to knock any other body's, I'm not like a bitter other Gen Xers be bitter, and so I'm not like they hate millennials, and I'm just like, I don't know what they did to you. It wasn't me, right? But that, so I don't seek to say, people who grow up in different generations or at different ages or stages of development have to navigate the ways that we do, or the ways that I do. But I will say that what's interesting about what I see, this whole like, oh, I don't work for free kind of movement. Okay. Like, you don't work for free, but sometimes you end up not working. You know what I'm saying? Like, at all, right? Yeah. Like, not to get paid at all. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that we should not be in situations. I mean, we can do all of the beautiful and well-crafted, thorough critiques of capitalism.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the fact that we have to work to exist, and that existence wasn't something that we conjured up, it's something that somebody else decided for us, right? Like, we could talk, I've just listened to a good podcast episode about, capitalism and philanthropy. That's a whole nother thing. Moral of the story is, I get it, sis. Like, you don't want to work for free. What I think is at the core of that, though, that I want people to get more specific about is, it's not that you don't want to work for free. Because we'll do work for free when we feel like it benefit us. You're going to wash some dishes because it's going to give you some favor. So part of it, we need to understand what resources we're talking about and not just money. Money ain't the only resource. Matter of fact, if you really lean into your craft, money is a kind of base level commodity, right? Yep. Like, your time should really be the commodity, because money in a lot of ways is fixed. Your salary might be fixed, but the price of my time go up every year.
Yep.
Right. And so there's that.
Worth more.
Yeah. And peace, right. And health and well-being and all of these different things. Right. But my point is, sometimes it's not just about this monetary exchange. So again, sometimes I'm doing some labor that I'm not getting paid for, but it's because it's getting me an experience that I want. Now, you have to determine that you want that experience, because sometimes older folks or, mentors or people ahead of you will say, well, you need to pay your dues. I don't believe in that.
No,
I don't believe in that. Like, and I want to be clear that that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you got to pay your dues unless it's an association that you're trying to be a member of. Right. Them the only folks that you have to pay dues to. Right. And so, if you're doing labor, do it because it's going to get you a skill set, a language, a relationship, a connection that you find valuable. And that later on, you might translate into something financial, if that's what you care to do. So I'm not saying work for free. I'm just saying that understand that there are different types of currency, and it's not just the financial currency, right? So, like, don't be short-sighted, by saying that you want to work. Because some people will say, like, oh, I don't work for free. And I was like, well, you don't have enough experience to get paid. So what's going to happen, right? And again, we can get into all of the critiques of that, but that's the reality that some of us live in, in the professions that we chose. Yeah. Or, that we ended up in or whatever. The second point, though, is that I think a lot of times people are saying, like, oh, I'm not working for free because they don't want to be exploited. And I think that's important too. Yeah. No one should be exploited, but we all work and live in this exploitative system that is, capitalism. Yeah. And so, that said, you do have to protect yourself from exploitation in a variety of different ways, right? I talk about all of the time in higher education, like, higher education runs on free labor. Entry-level practitioners go above and beyond 40 hours a week doing work that does not change their check. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so in those instances, I'm like, yes, don't be exploited, right? So one, choosing labor that's going to help benefit you, in tangible ways, but also making sure you protect yourself from that exploitation. That to protect yourself from that exploitation is important. So I don't want you to be exploited, but also don't want people to be assholes. And
Yeah.
so I think sometimes people are like, well, I ain't doing that.
Okay.
Okay. You know what I mean? And or I'll give you a better example. Somebody will say, well, I don't work for free. Well, what's your price? Crickets.
Yeah.
Again, you know what I mean? So like people are quick to say that they don't work for free, but they've not had enough experience to be able to monetize their skill set, their knowledge, and their time in ways that they can communicate compellingly to an employer. So don't tell me you don't work for free if you don't have an invoice sheet that you can send me. If you don't have a rate.
That part.
You know what I'm saying? You know, because if you don't work for free and then I got to figure out how much to pay you.
I'm going to pay you the bottom line. The lowest of the low, because
I'll do you one better. I'm going to think that you don't know what the hell you're doing. And so I'm going to go find somebody who knows what they're doing because they've done it before.
Yep. There.
Like, I'm not going to pay you. I'm going to pay somebody else. You know what I mean? So I say all that to say, I think that, again, don't be exploited, right? Protect yourself from exploitation. Absolutely. You know, don't do free labor that doesn't benefit you. Definitely only do if you find yourself in a place where you're doing work that don't necessarily change your check, let it be something that is going to, build up your skills, build up your credential, get you exposure in the ways that you want to. And to be fair, there's a limit to those things too. You know what I mean? Like there's only so much exposure you can get before you burnt out, you know what I mean, on that free work. So you definitely have to check in with yourself, have to focus on your wellness and find balance in those spaces. But this idea of like, I don't work for free from people who ain't never had a consulting contract. And it's like, okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you. It just becomes a point of information. Like, I don't work for free. I'm like, all right. I like pizza. I'm glad we learned a lot about each other in this moment. Next. Right. Versus, hey, I'd really like to engage with you in this work. Can we talk about what your budget is to pay somebody to do the types of things that you might want me to do?
Mm-hmm. Love that.
Bet.
Love it.
Bet. Right. So sometimes it's just about how you had a conversation and the attitude through which you approach it. Right. Like, I don't care about what your desire is to work or not for free. What I do care about is what it's going to take for me to get you to do this work if I want you to do it. And that's the place that the conversation should start if you indeed want to get paid.
Yep. So thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. If there's anything that you want to leave people with as they are trying to upscale, maybe move up, move out, move through in these different roles in different departments, what lasting advice would you give?
Ooh, I don't know if it's going to be lasting, but I'll give some advice. I wish somebody would have told me how little I would care about my jobs when I weren't in them anymore. So, there are times where you're in a job and you feel like that's your whole world, and you're trying to do well in it and you're trying to whatever. And then 2 jobs down the line, you're like, oh, damn, I did used to do that. Oh, that was kind of fun. Oh, okay. But then your world shift, right? And the reason why I say it is not because you should not work hard, that you should not take those things seriously, but that job is not the end of your world. Don't let it be, right? Don't let it be the boundary or the parameter, the extent to which you reach. Like, don't let these jobs circumscribe you in particular ways, and so, when you think about it in that way, for me, I treat my faculty job like this. People are like, oh my God, you're a professor, you got tenure. I'm glad that I got tenure. I'm glad that, my job offers me flexibility, but I didn't come to faculty life because I've had this desire to be some lifelong, professor academic. In a lot of ways, it was a means to an end. I wanted to know how faculty worked because I thought faculty got in the way of change. Yeah. Come to find out, they're a little misunderstood. Neither here nor there. When it's time for me not to do this no more, I'm gonna go somewhere else and do something else.
Yeah.
And so I can't be so focused on my life and my career, only understanding it within this space, that I don't think and dream about what else. Right. And so I guess what I'm getting at is, sometimes we get so focused in the space that we don't think and dream about what else. Always dream about what else. Always dream about, what's beyond, what's next. And don't let those dreams about what else or what's beyond or what's next only be about work.
Yeah.
Right. People are saying, what are the Black folks saying? Like, my ancestors didn't dream of labor. And I could get into a deep social critique about that because I understand it.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of, reaching back to, folks who are kind of descendants from chattel slavery in the US, and the fact that, forced labor, unpaid labor, enslavement,
Yes.
right, was a thing. And so, some of our greatest, ancestors' greatest dreams was rest. Absolutely. Check out the Nap Ministry because they talk a lot about, resting as a politic. But I think we also need to consider very seriously the fact that our ancestors weren't just laborers, right? Enslaved people were not just laborers. They were chefs and architects and mothers and, farmers and all of these things, right? When they were brought over, the knowledge that they had was brought over with them. That's why rice is growing in the southeastern United States. That's not a crop indigenous to that place. They brought rice and they brought the people with they being the colonizers, brought rice and they brought the people with the expertise to cultivate the land and grow the rice.
Yeah.
Who were enslaved.
Yes.
Right. And so I say that to say, yes, don't dream of labor, but dream of your contribution to the world. And maybe some type of vocation fits into that. Maybe it doesn't. Right. But what do you want to contribute to the world? And your world might be your family. Your world might be, the globe. I don't know. But dream beyond your job about what your contributions are. And don't let those contributions only be focused on work.
It makes me think, I'm sitting in this, as you're talking, this photo that you got me, it says her ideas are pure gold. Like being able to have ideas, being able to dream. I love that. So thank you so much for spending time out of your day and just sharing wisdom to the people. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.